I'm Dr. Cindy Baczynski, and I'm a practicing physician here in Indiana. I've been in practice for 25 years nearly as a private physician, and another 4 years I went to IU School of Medicine, and I also went to Purdue University, so I'm a Hoosier through and through. Additionally, I have been an adjunct faculty member at IU teaching medical students for the past 15 years. I'm also teaching students at University of Evansville, ISU, in the Deaconess Family Practice Residency, so I have a lot of interactions with students and learners. I am also a researcher. I'm also a business owner. I've owned my business now for the past 22 years. But the most important thing that I am is a mother. I'm a mother of 2 medical students. I have one that's at IU School of Medicine who's now in his 4th year of education. I have a student at Marion medicine of osteopathic medicine, who is also a 4th year medical student. And I had seen encroachment of DEI ideology into my work, but when my children became students and matriculated into the medical school, I really had a firsthand look at how DEI is impacting their education. And it has been very negative. Now I'm gonna stand here and say, every person deserves the freedom to speak. Every person deserves the freedom to achieve. Every person deserves the right to have equal opportunity, to have success in this world. That doesn't matter what your race is, that doesn't matter what your sex is, that doesn't matter what your gender identity is or your sexual orientation is. And I highly support that everybody should be having equal access to that. However, what's happening right now is DEI institutions with our medical schools are empowered to control language and control speech. And that is not fair to many of the students that are now going to school right now. So for example, my child and by the way, because of my children in medical school and they understand my sensitivities towards DEI and how that may be impacting their education, I have many medical students and kids of all levels of education coming to me to discuss with me how DEI has negatively impacted their medical education. So for example, there might be a discussion about minor gender affirmation care. And admittedly, there are many physicians who agree with that. On the other hand, there are many physicians who do not. That is not allowed to be discussed, or it's not able to be discussed because students know that there's retribution for speaking up about these things if they do not agree with an opinion. And so therefore, these students just don't say anything. They don't say anything if someone stands up and says, I'm offended that we're talking about obesity. We shouldn't be talking about obesity. That is one of the students stood up in one of my son's classes because they were talking about obesity and the negative effects on healthcare. And a student stood up and said, that is offensive. We shouldn't be talking about obesity. That is offensive to people. And they stopped the conversation. They stopped the lecture. The lecture never was given because they spent the rest of the time arguing about the merits of obesity as a medical condition. This is negatively impacting their education because certain individuals feel that they can speak up, and if anybody else speaks up against it that is not with what the DEI ideology mandates, then they are punished. Now let me tell you something about medical education. There is no merit-based reasoning behind where they end up in their residency training. Okay, so now there's pass-fail on grades, pass-fail on step 1, and when you get to clinicals, it's a combination of, you do take a test that you get graded on, but it also is in combination with the evaluations that you get from the preceptors. And depending on the thoughts of the preceptors, some of them are very punitive. In fact, there was a student that talked about how they were disagreeing with one of the preceptors about a medical debate, and it could have been minor affirmation care, it could have been LGBTQ issues, it could have been any of these, equity in different races. That student went there with good faith to discuss that with that preceptor, and that preceptor wrote them a terrible evaluation. Now, I'm not saying that the student did or didn't do a good job, but I can tell you there are punitive measures that happen when students disagree with certain people, and especially in the DEI department. And you have seen many people come up who are part of the DEI department. And I don't think that anybody here is saying that there's not discrimination. There's discrimination across the board of all kinds. And we have to recognize that by institutionalizing DEI into our medical education, we're institutionalizing discrimination against certain parts of our medical student body. And that is not fair to them. Every student should be able to speak up about what they think about any issue. That is the core of science. Science is we stand up and we debate respectfully with one another. I don't call you a name. If you disagree with something that I don't, that's fine. Let's talk about this. But to go and feel that a student cannot speak up because they're going to get penalized, and that is what is happening in DEI. DEI has been bastardized in medical school to be a punishment tool against students who do not adhere to the ideology of administrators and educators, especially in centers like Indianapolis, where it happens to be more progressive. Now, I will tell you it's even happening in Evansville. And I'll also tell you what DEI is doing. Because it allows people to be named as oppressors or some people to be named as oppressed, it automatically brings people in to say, you are a bad person. There was a male student who stood up, a white male student who stood up to say something about a comment about a woman's issue, and I think it happened to be on abortion, and literally was told by another person in the room, you need to sit down because you have white privilege and you have no right to speak on this topic. That person was not reprimanded. That person was not told that was wrong to do. That was okay. DEI is institutionalizing racist, discriminatory behavior against people and their thoughts. And diversity of thought is stifled by DEI. And I'm living it, my children are living it, and we are living it in residencies. Children are afraid to speak up because their futures solely rely on recommendations and evaluations by the people around them. They are afraid to speak up. And you are only allowed to speak up if you agree with the progressive ideologies, because the people who speak against that are called racist, homophobic, and every other kind of word, even though those individuals display none of that in the behaviors that they've had to get into medical school. To get into medical school, not only do you have to have academic success, you have to show that you volunteered in your community, that you have been a part of that community. We use lots of reasons to admit students into medical school. But we shouldn't be using quotas or any other reason. You come to medical school because you have the qualities and the intelligence to be there. After that, and if you know what, if you don't meet the intelligence or baseline qualities needed to be in medical school, then we need to improve our educational system starting in kindergarten. It can't start in medical school. So I submit to you that DEI is harming our medical students. It is causing distress, it's causing anxiety, it's causing fear, it's suppressing speech, it's doing all kinds of things. And by the way, we should have a department where everybody can speak. If you have DEI ideology and you want to talk about true diversity, inclusion, and equity, let's do it. Let's have a conversation. But to shut it down just because someone doesn't believe in that, that's wrong. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Senator Pohl.
Thank you, Madam Chair.